part of the DIFC. We're being broadcast live on LinkedIn. So we have numerous people watching us online as well. It's my real pleasure today to welcome an outstanding speaker, the CFO from Arabian Drilling, Hubert Lafeuille. You obviously can work out I'm a Brit and he's a Frenchman, so we won't be talking about football today. Otherwise, it would be unfair on the French. It's a real pleasure to have you with us today. We're going to be talking about Arabian Drilling's IPO journey. They listed in November 2022. They're in the top 50 companies within the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, with a market capitalization of roughly around $4 billion. Hubert led the entire organization through their IPO process from conception to listing. And as many of you know, in the region, we have many ambitions of IPO listings across the region. So I do know there are a lot of people online with us at this present moment in time that will be wanting to listen and learn from Hubert. If I can introduce Hubert, he's more of a third cultural kid than I am. And it's very rare for me to actually meet somebody who's more international than my own background. He was raised in 12 countries and speaks fluently 5 languages. Hubert, it's a real pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you very, very much for joining us. I know you're going to start with 3 slides on PowerPoint, and then we'll have a fireside chat conversation afterwards. Welcome to the Capital Club and welcome to Dubai. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I would like to thank Jan and Vivian and Mona and the Capital Club Dubai for giving me the opportunity to share the experience that we had through the IPO of Arabian Drilling. So, one of the things that, for a CFO, I mean, the IPO, listing a company and doing an IPO, completing an IPO is probably one of the most challenging and one of the most accomplished achievements than you can do as a CFO. And to do this presentation, I was trying to reflect on what is it that I've done in my life that can compare to this IPO experience. And I thought about it, and since I like to run, I thought, like, when you register for your first time marathon race, that is a bit comparable to what we did with the IPO. So I'm going to draw a little bit of analogy between the IPO journey and registering for your first marathon race. I don't know if we have any runners in the room, but can anyone tell me what's the distance of a marathon? Do you know the exact distance of a marathon? Yeah, 41.195. That's correct. That's correct. So before we talk about the IPO, let me just quickly introduce to Arabian Drilling, just to have a bit of a presentation. So we are in the business of drilling oil and gas well in Saudi Arabia, and we've been in the business for 60 years. Actually, 2024 is going to be the 60th anniversary of the company. We have about 6,200 employees, and we have a Saudization rate in excess of 60%. Now, we own and operate 49 drilling rigs, some of which are offshore in the sea, and some of them are in the land, and we have a market share of about 15%. So, and we are the biggest, in terms of fleet size, we are the biggest drilling contractor in Saudi Arabia. Now, what you need to know is that the market is quite competitive. There is a lot of different players. We're talking about 15 plus different players. But there are really 2 things that differentiates from the rest of the crowd is that first, we've been here the longest. So we know extremely well the geology, the reservoir formation in Saudi Arabia. And then we have the highest Saudization content. So that's really the two things. As Jan mentioned, we listed in November 2022. Last year, our revenue was about 3.5 billion Saudi Riyal, which is roughly $930 million US dollar. And we are in a growth mode because we are actually, adding more rigs and developing the unconventional gas field in Saudi. We have a market cap of roughly a little bit south of 4 billion US dollar. So now let me go back to the IPO and this analogy with the marathon. So as you can imagine, deciding to register for your first marathon or deciding to go IPO, it's an important decision, right? It requires a very well thought, very well organized, very well planned journey, and then you need to do a lot of trainings, along the road. So if you think of a distance of 42 kilometers and the furthest that you have run is 5K, for instance, I mean, we're talking about 8 times that distance, right? So it's massive. So I'm going to go through the different step of the IPO and driving this analogy. So the first thing is that.
Click again. And one more.
Oh, there you go. Okay. So the first thing is the IPO decision. So it's commit and get ready for the race. So the moment you take the decision, all you can think about is this massive challenge that's going to come ahead of you, right? It's just a question of time. It's coming your way. The second thing is the IPO readiness. So to me, the IPO readiness is equivalent to a thorough medical check, just to make sure that you are fit for run, you are fit for the IPO. We're going to discuss a lot of this during the fireside discussion. And then you need to do your training. You need to do your mileage, and you need to do a lot of it, right? Now, the third step is the pre-IPO roadshow. So this is, to me, the equivalent of you are in the race, because the pre-IPO roadshow is when basically the management team of the company is going to meet with the potential investors, with the analysts, and this is where you have to sell your company, you have to sell your equity story. Again, we'll talk about more detail during the discussion. And obviously, when you cross the finish line, to me, is equivalent as you go listing. This is your listing day. And then you have your life as a listed company, which is to maintain and build on your newfound fitness, which is after you've done your marathon, you still need to run. I mean, if you want to keep your good, your good health, you need to keep your running practice. If you stop running, then basically, it's going to be very hard to get back to that level. Well, as an IPO, the moment you become listed, your life is completely going to change, particularly from the perspective of a CFO, and we'll discuss that. So I just wanted to show you those different steps and draw this analogy with the marathon. Now, one thing on a more personal front, I would say that obviously when you go for a marathon and you have this finish line in your sight of view, I mean, this is the best moment, right? And when you cross that finish line, there is a sense of there is a self-satisfaction, accomplishment, which is absolutely astonishing. I mean, these are pictures from the last half marathon that I ran, which were a couple of months ago, and to those pictures, I would like to show a side by side with the pictures of when we got the best IPO awards. So a few months after we listed, so this was back in February 2023, a few months after we listed, we actually received the best IPO award from the Saudi exchange markets. And this was, pretty much, the cherry on the cake, if I could say. And this was one of my proudest professional moments. And it kind of felt the same thing as, when you finish your first marathon and you say, wow, I did it. So this is what I wanted to show you. The personal text, the skills upgrade, the trickle effects, and completing an IPO give you wings. I don't want to give a spoiler. We're going to discuss that with Jan, so I leave that for the discussion. So that's all the slide that I wanted to show, and I think Jan, I'm going to join you for the discussion.
Please come and join me, Hubert. Thank you very, very much for joining us at the Capital Club.
Thank you.
As always, I prepped a few questions beforehand. Could you start by giving us an overview as to how one would assess a company's readiness to go public?
So this is where, maybe allow me to go back to the previous slide and where we have the step, because I think this is so the IPO readiness would be this stage where it's equivalent to me where you have a medical test, right? So basically there's going to be a number of due diligence work streams that are going to take place through the company. So you're going to have a project team. So we're talking about a team made up of, you're going to have lawyers, you're going to have accountants, you're going to have auditors, you're going to have tax advisors, you're going to have investment bankers, etc. And they're going to look at every aspect of the organization, and they're going to see, okay, is this company ready to go public? Does it have all the requirements? So let me give you a couple of examples. So for instance, leadership compliance, right? Mm-hmm. So do you have the required numbers of independent board directors, yep, in your board? Do you have all the subcommittees that you need to have, like the audit committee, the ExCom committee, the NRC, etc., etc. So that's one thing. So another one would be on the corporate governance. So on the corporate governance, you have to look at your company bylaws. Mm-hmm. Are your company bylaws in adequation with the regulation of the Capital Market Authority? Then they're going to look at your financial reporting. So this is the heavy lift, right? Because you're public, you're going to have to disclose your quarterly earnings. Do you have a comprehensive reporting package, yep, with proper MD&A and MD&A analysis that you can go and explain to the market what has happened from one quarter to the other. There are so many things that are being looked at, and this is the IPO readiness. These are all the due diligence work streams that are taking place, and different people are assigned to different categories. So the lawyers will look at the governance, the compliance. The auditors will look at the monthly reporting. So the communication expert will put together the equity story. So there is a lot of different people that are looking at how to make sure that when we have gap identified, that we bridge those gaps. So it's a massive work, and at the end of the day, the end result is basically a 400-page document, which is called the IPO prospectus, and the IPO prospectus has everything in it. So it will have the corporate history, it will have the governance, it will have the financials, it will have the market assessment done by a third party. And the IPO prospectus basically is, the information which is released to the public, and then investors can refer, they can read or not the 400-page, and then they can make an informed decision of whether or not to invest. But this IPO readiness is this is what really takes the most of time. And this is where it's like being audited under all possible aspects for a period of 6 to 9 months.
So you've talked about the prospectus, you talked about the investment bankers, you've talked about the audit. Can you mention and highlight maybe some of the organizational changes that you had to undergo from being pre-IPO to being IPO ready?
Yeah. So from an organization change, it's really a game changer. I mean, you have everyone across the organization has to step up the game, right? It's almost like you're playing with the big boys. You're in Premier League, and you have to step up the game. So this is what I call the trickle effect. I mentioned in one of the slides the trickle effect. So the trickle effect to me is where all of a sudden I'm doing stuff in this pre-IPO work. I'm doing stuff that I never done before, right? So I have to give up some of the CFO task to concentrate on the pre-IPO. So my CFO task goes to my N-1, and he or she now is doing tasks that he or she was not doing before, right? So the task of my N-1 goes down to the N-2, etc., etc., etc. So throughout the organization, all of a sudden you have a bunch of people that are exposed to things that they have never done before, right? And this is the trickle effect. And this is extremely important because I think that it's an excellent way to identify high potential people. This is where you can see people that are up to they take on a bigger task. All of a sudden the job scope responsibility becomes important. You give them more responsibility, and this is where you see that they shine.
So it actually gives your NRC an opportunity to be able to try and promote some of these internal talents.
Absolutely,
as well.
absolutely. This is an excellent opportunity to identify local or hidden talents.
So you highlighted that you've pushed down some of your roles and responsibilities as a daily operating CFO to some of the elements that report into you. I'm assuming one of the responsibilities you took on was the pre-IPO roadshow prior to the launch. Could you walk us through that and what the particular elements were there?
So the pre-IPO roadshow is really a crucial moment because this is the moment in time where the management team is put in front of the investors, right? Yeah. And this is very important. So to me, this is the equivalent of you run the race. I mean, when you run the race, I mean you are in the race. Come what may, you have your friends looking at you, you have your sponsors, you have your investors, you have your family, etc. Come what may, you have to cross that finish line with grace, right? In a graceful way. So the pre-IPO roadshow. So the way it works is basically we have one-on-one engagement, one-on-one meet investors. So either one-on-one or small group, right? And it's typically a 1-hour meeting where we have 20 to 25 minutes which are dedicated to presenting the company, and then the rest of the time is Q&A, right? The one thing that was very interesting in the roadshow that we did is the fact that we were the first drilling contractor, and for that matter we're the first oilfield service company to be listed in Saudi. Aramco was listed, but there was no other oilfield service company listed in Saudi. So we had to spend a lot of time educating the investors on the business model, right? Because they need to understand, what is the business model, how is the growth strategy, what is our trajectory, etc. And for that, you need to give them a bit of a heads up on the business model. So we need to discuss about, you know, the type of asset that we have, the contractual framework that we have with our clients, you know, the competitive strengths, the market share, you know, except the technology, etc., etc. So it was very interesting in the sense that we spend a lot of time educating the investors about how does a drilling contractor business work.
The listing rules and regs for a publicly listed company are fundamentally different from a non-listed entity, and getting the right balance between the transparency but selling the story is very, very interesting. How did you manage to sell the story to investors?
So what you need to do is you need to build the equity story. So the equity story is really the investor's value proposition, right? So this is the sales speech where you are going to tell to the investor how you will transform a business opportunity into profit, into growth, and ultimately into shareholders value. So it's something that has to be clear, it has to be compelling, it has to be comprehensive, right? So the equity story is really the backbone of why you would want investor to pitch into your stock and to invest into your company. So the equity story that we had when we came to the public, I think was two things mainly. First, we are on a growth trajectory because basically, there is the rig demand kept going on, and there is a lot of drilling demand in Saudi Arabia. And then second thing is that for a drilling contractor, Saudi Arabia is the place to be. I mean, in terms of drilling, I mean, when you think about, the Saudi offering the most competitive production costs in terms of barrel produced, it's the place to be. So this was the equity story that we had.
It's interesting because I can visualize what you're talking about, because my family was in the oil and gas drilling operations. So as a child, I used to be on oil rigs, literally offshore.
You've seen that, yeah.
So what you're describing and the memories come back to me. You've been through this once, and you made the comment right at the beginning that you'd never done it before. Now that you've been through it, what would you have done differently?
So I think that I really enjoyed this experience. So I mean, the amount of work is absolutely crazy. I mean, when I think about the amount of time that you need to dedicate for the IPO, it's almost like you have two jobs, right? I mean, you have your IPO hat, that's, for up until, let's say, from 8 till 3 p.m. And then at 3 p.m. you put your CFO hat, and then it's the running the business.
It's 3 from 11 to the
evening. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So these are very, very long days, long hours, and it goes on for 6 to 9 months. So it's quite intense. But the reward is the skills upgrades. I mean, how the amount of things that you learn. I mean, how you come out of that is very rewarding. So I really didn't mind the long hours because of all I learned. And because, for instance, my ability to come here and share my experience with others. So yes, it is. The reward is absolutely great. I mean, the skills upgrade at all level of the organization is fantastic. So that's a great opportunity. I think it was a textbook IPO. I mean, honestly, the way we worked with the project team, when I mentioned the auditors, the lawyers, the investment bankers, etc., we worked extremely well. And one thing that this IPO did as well is that I think that not only it reveals some hidden young Saudi talent through this trickle effect, but also it breaks the work in silo culture, because all the departments really have to come together to build this IPO prospectus and to build this equity story, and so it breaks the silo, the work in silo culture, I thought. I mean, from my perspective. I mean, the one thing that maybe we would have done a little bit differently. I mean, it's maybe when you think about an IPO, it's good to think about the treasury shares. The treasury shares, so that you can have some company-owned stock, so you can fund some stock-based compensation to hire and retain young Saudi talents. So this is maybe the one thing that we could have done slightly differently.
Now, in your pre-IPO roadshow, one of the most important elements is building the trust and the confidence with your future potential investor base. How do you do that?
Yeah, so it is absolutely essential that you give to the investor the perception that this business is being led by the right people. And the thing is that one thing, common feedback that we had, after we did our roadshow or pre-IPO roadshow. So just to put into perspective, so we probably did about 120 to 130 meetings with investors. So one-on-one meetings and small groups. So these are the meetings, the 1 hour meeting that I said, 20, 25 presentation, and then the rest of the meeting Q&A. So we met a lot of people, and one common feedback that came after the roadshow is that it's how the investor perceived that the C-suite team, I mean the CEO, the COO, and myself, how well we bonded and how well we gelled together. So there was real perception that we are absolutely on the same wavelength, that we speak the same language, that we're completely aligned. And there was also the perception that we had a lot of experience. When we presented, the three of us, so the COO, the COO, and myself, we came out and said, look, we have combined 75 years of experience in the oil and gas services. We have lived, between the three of us, we have lived in 24 different countries, not counting the countries where, that overlap, right? And then the three of us, we speak, 7, 8 languages. So that came as a pretty powerful statement. So building this credibility at this point in time is extremely important, and it's just the way you are confident answering the question. Is just the way you show that you know this business on top of the hand, the way you show that you are convinced that you're going to be achieving your growth trajectory, et cetera, et cetera. So
would I be right in the assumption that it's two main drivers? One is the quality of talent and experience in the C-suite, and two is the oversight of the governance and controls for the future reassurance once you've gone through your IPO?
Yes, and also making sure that the equity story, you're going to be able to deliver on your equity story, because the equity story is all about what is going to be your vision, what is going to be your strategy, what is your growth trajectory, and how you're going to be able to convert that into shareholder value. And when I mean shareholder value, I mean either dividend or stock growth. So these are the three pillars of that builds the confidence.
I have a very good friend of mine who's going through an IPO here in Dubai at the moment. It's public information, a chain called Spinneys. One of the challenges is determining your issuing price.
Yep.
How did you do that?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. Again, something that I've learned. I've never done an IPO before. So basically, the process is the following. So you have to build a bit of a. So your equity story. You know that you're going to grow. You have to translate that growth into numbers, into prospective numbers. So what we did is we built a 5-year plan, right? Based on what we know of the market, based on our market share, based on the growth that we see, etc. We build a 5-year plan and we convert that growth into numbers. So revenue, earnings before EBITDA, net income, etc., etc. Now this plan is then audited. I mean, we show it to the investment bankers, we show it to the auditors. They try to, they make sure that the plan is solid, that the assumption can be verified, that the plan stands on 2 legs. And then basically, so you have established your prospective financial results, right? And then you look at trading multiples of listed peer companies.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
So we had, to quote 2 companies, there is ADNOC Drilling, which is a regional drilling contractor, and there was another listed company which is called Shelf Drilling as well, which is also regional shelf contractors, right? So you look at the trading multiple of the listed peers, you compare that, you see the range of the trading multiples, and you apply those trading multiples to your prospective, financial numbers, and then you get a range of price, right? This is how you price it. And then what we do is, before the IPO, you also have to throw a little bit of a discount element, just to create the appetite,
to create a little bit of market demand when you open.
To create a little bit of market demand. So in our case, for instance, what happened is we announced that the share price would be between the range of 90 to 100 Saudi Riyal per share.
Okay.
Right. And then there is this process which is called the boot building, right? So during a week, then basically people, investors, potential investors, can make the offer. So they would go to the investment bankers that we have mandated, and they will say, okay, I would like to buy X, million or thousands of shares of Arabian Drilling, and this is called the book building, right? So it starts for a week, and if the demand is very strong, then you can push your share price at the top of the range, right? Because people are going to say, okay, you know, at 90, I will buy 1 million share, for instance. At 100, I will buy 500,000 shares, right? So they give different demand, different slot demand of shares based on different prices. And if it turns out that at the top of the range, you have an oversubscription, you have more demand than shares that you can put on the market, then obviously you can push your price at the top of the range. So just to give you an idea, so we put on the market around 27 million shares, a little bit less than 27 million shares, and the oversubscription was 62 times higher, which means fantastic. That we received demand from the market corresponding to 62 times 27 million shares. So that obviously means that when we introduced, we were at liberty to go at the top of the range and announce 100. But to go back to your question, your valuation is based on comparing, looking at the trading multiples of listed peer companies and comparing where those trading multiples, what kind of financial result those companies has. You compare to yours, you take those trading multiples and you will define an IPO value range.
Fully understood.
And when we talk about trading multiples, I mean, typically there are three things that people will look at. I mean, this is the role of the investment bankers. So they will typically look at the enterprise value to EBITDA trading multiple. They will look at the PE, the price per earning multiple, and they will also look at the dividend yield. How much dividend you expect to pay. So they work a triangulation, with the listed peers, and then they define how much they think in the current context the company is worth.
Just before I ask you the next question, just let our audience know, both on LinkedIn and at the Capital Club, that we'll be opening the floor for questions. So if you want to start thinking those through, we'll open the floor in a few minutes' time in terms of questions. Next question is a personal question.
Yeah.
You were the CFO pre-IPO, and you're the CFO post-IPO.
Yeah.
How's your job changed?
Right. So, couple of things come to my mind. The first thing is, obviously, as a CFO of a publicly listed company, there is all this investor relation engagement that becomes a big part of your job. So this is where, you have to engage with the investor, you have to engage with the sell side analyst. So that takes a little bit of time. So the engagement takes the form of, for instance, every quarter we make an earnings release, where we discuss, financially, operationally, what has happened during the quarter. Then the following day, the day that follows the release, we normally get into a call. We do a 1-hour conference call where we have a slide deck as well. So there is a regular quarterly meeting with the investors and the analyst. We do attend also investor conference. We are invited at a number of conference. We had a lot of demand. There was a lot of demand from all the investors that wanted to meet Arabian Drilling because we were the first drilling contractor in Saudi Arabia. So it creates a lot of demand. So during those investors conference, a lot of people are willing and eager to meet with us. So this takes about 30 to 35% of my time. So this is something which is completely new, right? I mean, before it didn't exist. So that's one thing. All the investor relation activities and program. The second thing I would say is, obviously, you have a bit of the pressure from the markets because you go out and you give guidance, right? And when you give guidance to the analyst, you need to deliver on those. You need to deliver on those numbers. So there is a little bit of pressure in terms of making sure that you're going to be able to deliver what your guidance says. We like to think of Arabian Drilling as a company that we say what we do and we do what we say. There is no surprise, right? So that's the other thing. And then there is of course a little bit of the public exposure. I mean, I go on live TV's interviews to comment the quarterly results. I get invited to panels such as this. I'm invited to write articles in the press. It's all
part of the story. Yeah.
So it's all part of the story. Yes, absolutely.
The audience doesn't know. They're going to know now that obviously I've interacted with your board before, so I'm very familiar with the ethics and the values with which your board is leading this organization. What are the types of controls that we have in place to make sure that we mitigate all the reputational risks of any potential insider dealings and others? So what are the typical controls that you would follow to make sure that reputation is intact?
So you remember, I mean, we discussed about how we have a number of due diligence work streams that happens in the IPO readiness, which is like the bills of health, the medical check, right? So one of the thing that we did was to conduct training on the, for instance, the insider trading.
Yep.
I mean, insider trading is it's something which is of paramount importance. So along the journey of the IPO, we kept the employees informed. We bring them along and we get them excited about the journey. But we also told them, look, no, these are also the obligations. Yep. So one of the obligations, for instance, in the insider trading, so what we had to do is we conducted training. We identify who were the restricted people who could not trade the stock. We identify what are the ban period as per the Capital Market Authority regulation. When can you not trade the stock when you're an insider, etc. So it all goes with a lot of training and a lot of awareness and just engaging with the employees along that journey. So this is very important as well. So as you're being audited on all kind of fronts, you also need to think about keeping the employee informed and telling them how this is going to change. I mean, for instance, even during the pre-IPO roadshow, we had do's and don'ts posters all over the office, and it was things like do not discuss financial numbers outside of the company, even with your wife, etc. So we had a lot of do's and don't rules for people to understand. This is serious. We have to be careful about those kind of things. So it's all about training. It's all about employee engagement. Again, bringing them along and getting them excited through the journey.
Hubert, thank you very much. May I open the floor to questions?
Of course.
Can we have any questions from the audience? Sir, good morning.
Good morning. My name is Per Söderlund. I ran a company 10 years ago in Saudi. What is your take on Saudization? You said 61%?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I continue. What is your take on Saudization, 61%? How important is that for the attractiveness of the company now with the public investors? Secondly, how do you find the task of maintaining and training these 61% of Saudis?
So the Saudization is very important in our line of field. I mean, we are bound to reach a certain level of Saudization with Saudi Aramco, which is our main clients. So luckily, because we are a Saudi company and because we've been here for 60 years, we have the highest Saudization of all the drilling contractors. So we're doing quite fine now. What's funny, I mean, the thing is that when people say Saudi is like, okay, so employing Saudi talent behind the computer, right? In the case of a drilling contract, we're not talking about people sitting in an AC office behind the screen, right? We're talking about people working on the drill floor in the middle of the summer, even sometime during Ramadan, and it's 12-hour shift, right? So that makes this Saudization figures even more impressive. I think Arabian drilling reputation comes a long way. We've been in the business for a long time, so there has been generation, from father to sons that have been working with us. So that's one thing. Retaining, we see a lot of young talents coming in Saudi Arabia. Retaining them has become a bit of an issue because of the boom that we see in Saudi Arabia, and this is why what we have done recently is we have implemented some retention plan to be able to retain the Saudi talents. But I think again, I would say, the reputation, the operational excellence. Everybody in the Eastern Province is aware of the name of Arabian Drilling, and then the retention, the training program. We have a very good training program. We span countless number of man hours. We offer 160 different training courses. We have our own training academy. So this is part of all. There is a career progression when you work on the rig, and it's a very well established career plan. And people knows that within 2 years I can get to that position, another 3 years I can get there, etc., etc. So it's a well structured, it's well organized career path, if you want. So this is what is helping us: the reputation, the career path, the retention. So it's a mixed bag of things. But to your point, it's true that because of the Saudi economy booming, attrition has become a bit of an issue, particularly in the drilling business, because there has been a lot of new contract award in Saudi. So all the different drilling contractors were trying to crew up staff up their rigs.
And we're seeing this challenge across industries. I sit on the nominations and remuneration committee of a company in Jeddah. We're looking at an IPO at some point in the next 24 months. Our staff retention, especially our local talented staff, has become a major issue. When we've got PIF, we've got Riyadh, we've got people attracting with 30%, 40% increases in pay packages. Making sure that you're really capable of retaining the quality of talent is a major issue in the kingdom at this present moment in time.
It's funny you mentioned PIF. I mean, this is what we've been seeing. I mean, we've been seeing a lot of people being offered jobs in Riyadh, whether it's PIF or not PIF, but being offered job in Riyadh with a significant increase. But I mean, again, so far I think that the fact that we are very well established. We have an entrenched relationship with Saudi Aramco. We've been in the business for 60 years. We're very well implanted in the region. Has helped us as well. I mean, people know that Arabian Drilling is a good company and it's a good name, and it is a plus. It is a plus on the CV.
Thank you very much. Second question from the audience. Should we take the one at the back? Yes, sir. Now I'll come to you in a second.
Good morning, Kashif Malik. Thank you. I guess I'll dial it back into a little bit more of the personal one. It sounds as though you've related this to running, so I'll try to bring some parallels. How do you stay motivated post IPO? It sounds like you're still on this runner's high. You like the IR, you're going to these interviews, but after a while, that's going to feel like you're running your 5Ks and your time is getting better and better. So the question is, at what point does the motivation stay there, or are you going to start to say, oh, I want to do a triathlon? And then also you talked about training and some succession planning, and there probably is chances that they want to change the runner at some point. So a little bit more personal, maybe you can continue on the journey and how you see it going forward.
I think that, look, I mean, it's true that, after the IPO, the IPO is just the beginning. Let's be clear, right? I mean, then you have your post-IPO life, which is, keeping the engagement with the investors, with the analysts. I think what really is the most important is keeping the credibility of the management team. I mean, at any point in time, you really have to make sure that you always give the perception that the management team is credible. And one of the things that we did, I mean, for instance, we increased the coverage significantly. We started at the IPO with 3 sell-side analysts, and now we have 11 different analysts covering the stock. And we think that we're going to be able to add 2 more in the next quarters. And one of the key success of being able to increase the coverage that much was, I think, due to the fact that first we make ourselves available. I mean, senior management. I mean, CEO, myself. We make ourselves available, and it's very important for the analysts. They want to talk to the top guys. So that's one thing. The second thing is that we are very transparent and forthcoming. We give a lot of data. We give guidance, for instance, which is not very common for a company in Saudi to give guidance. Not a lot of companies give guidance. So we give guidance, and we really, we have a lot of engagement. We have the earnings call, post-earnings call. We call back one by one all the analysts, and we tell them, look, do you have any clarification? Is there anything that you want to follow up on? So we do a lot of engagement with the analysts, and we basically help them, build a model that is close to our own projections. And the thing is that we don't shy away from questions as well. I mean, if there is bad news, then we give the market the bad news, and give me the bad news as soon as possible. We're not in the business of hiding under the carpet bad news. So I think all of that makes that the analysts are very comfortable working with us. We are very approachable. We are very transparent. We're very forthcoming, and this is something that has helped us building the coverage. So this is the way I see it going forward, right? I mean, you need to keep your credibility. You need to keep your engagement. You need to keep the transparency with the analyst. I think your second question was about changing whether I want to go to triathlon or Ironman, etc. I mean, what I would say is that the IPO gives you wings, in the sense that once you have completed an IPO, it's almost like you can take up any challenge. An M&A, sure, bring it on. It really gives you rings, right? Because the IPO is like the mother of all projects when you are a CFO, right? So I think that it gives you wings in the sense that there is more growth, if there is more growth opportunity, if there is M&A, if there is opportunity to expand regionally, to buy business, to buy companies, etc., then you're ready for it, because it's almost like you have done it in the past. So it gives you a sense of strong confidence in your ability to handle very complex projects.
I also like the balance, the ethics that I've been understanding from your board in terms of the transparency. And you just said it now. If there is bad news, you're going to disclose it.
Of course.
And it's just a way of creating that credibility with the global investor platform. We had a question from the gentleman at the front of the room.
Two questions. What does your investor base look like? Is it mostly Saudi or global? And then to trading market, I have no clue what it looks like in Saudi. I mean, without going into too much detail, but what are the players? How do they differentiate? How do they position there?
Yeah. So the investor base is mainly Saudis. I mean, the big chunk of our investors are in Saudis, about 85%, and then 15% is distributed among GCC, and then the Western world, I would say. I mean, Europe and the US. And I mean, typically, the investors, you're talking about big corporates, big bank portfolio managers, hedge funds, insurance companies, sovereign funds as well, etc. So we have a good mix. We have a good mix of investors, both in the type of institutional investors as well as the geography. Even though most of the investors are in Saudi, I mean, we're a Saudi company. We are listed in the Saudi exchange market, so it makes all sense that a big base of the investors are from the Saudi. And sorry, your second question was about the drilling, the drilling market. So it's a very fragmented market. We have a lot of different players. I mean, 15 plus also. One of the things that I said that one of the things that differentiate ourselves is that we've been here the longest, and we have the highest Saudization. We have the highest Saudization level. There is another thing as well, which is we are present both in the land and the offshore, which is not the case. I mean, normally, more often than not, you would have drilling contractors that are either specialized in offshore, they only do offshore, or they only do land. We do a little bit of both, because we serve Aramco, and Aramco has drilling needs in both the land or the offshore. We don't have. I mean, we like to think that we are the Saudi national drilling champion, because of the time that we've been here and because of our very high Saudi content. We have a few other competitors. We have there is some GVs. Aramco has some GVs with some drilling contractors, both land and offshore. But those GVs were more established to create an ecosystem of rig manufacturing in Saudi. So those GVs were here to basically put orders to build rig in Saudis and create the whole supply chain and rig manufacturing in Saudis. So and we have also international drilling contractors. I mean, the thing is that Saudi, for drilling contractors, Saudi is a very interesting place. As I said, it's the place to be, because in the long run, the last drop of oil will come from this region.
Middle Eastern markets have got a history of being, especially on the retail side, on the retail investor side, more focused on dividends rather than capital appreciation. It sounds like the majority of your investors are institutional investors. What are they looking for? I think they're looking into I think what they like to hear is the growth trajectory and how able we are executing on that growth. So the long-term valuation. Yes, I think so, because I mean, this is really, again, our equity story, as I said, the equity story, which is the shareholder value proposition. I think our equity story was about how we're going to grow inside the GCC area, and how we're going to benefit from our very well established position to grow with the business. And actually, when we did in the pre-IPO roadshow, we present a 5-year plan, and we said, look, in the 5-year plans, by the end of year 2026, we'll have increased the fleet size by X, right? And we have almost reached that target. So already. It's almost, I mean, 2 years ahead, we have reached that target. And this is something that suits very well the investors, because they want to see, I mean,
they want to make sure that the management team has the ability to deliver on the growth trajectory. So this is extremely important. So I would think that most of them are looking for the growth stock. Saying so, you're absolutely right of saying that dividend is also important, and especially for the retail.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did, since we listed, we did 2 dividend payment already. So we return value to the shareholder through cash dividend as well. Yeah.
Any other questions from our audience? Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Tanveer Shah. Thank you very much for sharing your insights. And as a fellow marathoner, I'll also, draw some parallels with running a marathon. Usually around the 30K, 35K mark, you hit a wall,
Yes.
right? Your glycogen levels are down. Most people may have heard about it, experienced it. Where's the parallel that you draw with your experience? What was the low point? What was, were there burnouts? Was there sort of team fatigue with that 6-12 month build up? If so, how did you deal with it? What are sort of ways to overcome sort of resistance or fatigue internally?
So very, very good question. So interestingly enough, when I ran the marathon, I precisely hit a wall at 30 kilometers, and the rest of the 12 kilometers, I was like, I had cramps, etc. So it was awful. Now, luckily, it did not happen for the IPO, right? So, no, I think it was the energy level was, the excitement builds up, so the energy level kept very high. As I said, we worked extremely well with the deal team. We worked extremely well, the C-suite, we worked very well together. The excitement was there. So there was no low point. I mean, we were ready to go. We were very well prepped. We had a good story to tell. We were excited about, educating the investors about the drilling business, because no one. I mean, the foreign analysts, they know about the drilling company because they may be covering stock for other drilling companies. But the analysts in Riyadh, they don't know about the drilling business, right? Strange enough, but they don't know really how we get oil out of the ground, right? So this education process. So there was a lot of excitement. So we didn't hit that wall. On the contrary, the closer to the listing date, and the more eager we were to go, saying yes, we are ready, we want to go, and we think it's going to be a good IPO, etc. So there was a massive. It was very, very exciting. So it keeps the energy level very high.
Please allow me to make a comment on behalf of Hubert and Arabian Drilling. They didn't hit the wall because of the amount of training they'd done beforehand. So I'm not sure Hubert is being completely honest in terms of the amount of work that went before they actually entered the marathon. If you don't put the training in, then yes, it is very possible that at 30 kilometers you're going to hit the wall.
Yeah, absolutely. No. I mean, of course. I mean, it's all the long hours, etc. But there is the excitement. There is the fact that you come to the office and you speak to the deal team and they tell you stuff and they say and they learn. I mean, you learn every day, right? So so I don't mind the hard work as long as I keep upgrading my skills. And this is exactly what happened. So it was. So we didn't hit the hole. And on the day of the listing, we were ready. Regardless of the lack of sleep, the sleep deprivation that we had in the weeks before.
Hubert, time flies when you're enjoying yourselves. We've been talking for nearly an hour. I'm going to open the floor to 1 or 2 more questions before I ask you the final question.
Sure.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning. First of all, thank you so much for this nice presentation. And Jan, great questions. Really enjoyed. I think the marathon analogy is very perfect for describing this process. I have a quick question. Will you consider to go to another stock exchange in the future? Will you run another marathon?
So it's a very good question. Look, I mean, at some point in time, we have the ambition to become a regional player in GCC. So right now we're only in Saudi. But if we want to become a regional players, potentially we're looking at a couple of M&A acquisition, and those M&A acquisition might be too big to swallow through debt, right? So you would need to raise equity, for instance, to complete one of those M&A targets. So yeah, I mean, an equity transaction in the future is always possible if we have a good opportunity and if we think that it's going to add value to the shareholders. Yeah, absolutely. So maybe not in the form of an IPO, but in the form, as I said, of raising cash through equity to complete an M&A or yes.
Yeah, just to maybe add some more details on that. So if you would go to another stock exchange, what stock exchange that would be?
Going into another stock exchange. Look, I mean, at this point in time, I don't think it will be necessary. I mean, the stock exchange in Saudi is very active. It's very liquid. It draws a lot of demand. We think it's a bit of a hotspot right now. And again, we're a Saudi company. We only operate in Saudi. So at this point in time, I wouldn't see particularly the need to go to another stock exchange. We're very quite happy with the listing place that we have, which is Tadawul.
Hubert, let me ask you our final question.
Sure.
What next for Arabian Drilling? Where are we going in the next 3 years?
So we have an exciting new chapter coming ahead, which is that right now we have won a lot of contract awards in the unconventional gas. Mm-hmm. And the unconventional gas is very important for Saudi Arabia because it's the cornerstone of the energy transition mix. So what the kingdom wants to do is decarbonize the production of electricity, and instead of burning fuel, they want to run gas turbine, right? So we just won a new contract award with new 13 rigs in the unconventional gas. Mm-hmm. So this is very exciting to us. We're gonna start very soon. We are receiving the first 4 rigs have been received in Saudi, so we're rigging them up, we're assembling them, and then they're gonna start drilling for gas. Another thing that we are pretty excited about is that, and this goes back on the sustainability side, is we have been awarded geothermal drilling. So this is the first time that we do geothermal well. So we are drilling geothermal because I mean when you drill for oil and gas, I mean you can as well drill for geothermal. So this is as well. We have 1 rig that has started a geothermal campaign as well, which is again completely part of the Vision 2030 in terms of decarbonization and sustainability. So we're quite happy and quite excited that Arabian Drilling is being looked at to basically spearhead this energy transition.
Hubert, on behalf of the Capital Club here in Dubai, can I thank you very, very much for your time? Sincerely appreciated. I look forward to having you back hopefully in 3 years' time, and you can tell us about the next steps that you've been through. Ladies and gentlemen, can I ask you all to show your appreciation to Hubert Lafeuille, CFO Arabian Drilling. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
A real pleasure having you.
Thank you.
And if we can now cut the live feed, I would be very grateful. Thank you very much to everybody joining us online in LinkedIn. Hubert.
Thank you. Merci. Merci.